Okay, let's talk about some of the problems with the concept of reconstruction. So many people bring up the topic of reconstruction. Now, of course, a lot of this is to do with the conflating of the word deconstruction with its kind of like worldly use in day-to-day life. We talked about the definition of deconstructing as far as it's used in the community of deconstructing Christians. It's quite different from just a simple process of deconstructing in like the sense of construction, in the sense of building a house. Deconstruction does feel very destructive. You're deconstructing a house, you're tearing it apart, you're breaking it down. You probably do want to construct something onto that house later, right? Very few people downsize their houses unless they're moving to a nicer area or something like that, or they feel wasteful and they want to be a bit more ecologically sustainable. But on the whole, people do a deconstructive process for the purpose of then building something more, for doing some sort of reconstructive process. But as we talked about with the definition of deconstructing Christians, what we're looking at is something that is actively constructive. When you take away a belief, you add a belief. If I say I no longer believe in God, that is a deconstructed belief, my belief in God, but it's also a constructed belief. I don't believe in God. I have replaced one belief with another. It's not that I suddenly have nothing to believe. Deconstructed Christians aren't without beliefs. They have changed their beliefs. They have decided something isn't true. Their belief might even be, I'm not entirely sure what I believe about that right now, but that is something that they believe. They are not sure about something. And so the process of deconstructing is constantly the process of tearing apart an old belief and replacing it with something new, even if it's temporary. And so we have to be careful of our own biases and needs for people to believe the right thing. We have a very strong emphasis on what the right thing to believe is and what the wrong thing to believe is. Now, a lot of this comes from our path out of a conventional Christian space. Conventional Christianity is very black and white. It is very dualistic. There is an in, there is an out. There is a right, there is a wrong. There is a saved, there is an unsaved. There is a Christian and a non-Christian. These are very black and white with a hard line down the middle. If you believe the things on the right side, you're good. If you believe the things on the wrong side, you're in trouble. And we'll get to that when we talk about how to tell loved ones that you're deconstructing, or how to interact with people that are conventional Christians and stuff as you deconstruct. Those are coming in future videos. But this black and white way of thinking holds hard. Even as we deconstruct, we often have very linear concepts of what in and out mean. We grow, and maybe our in becomes bigger and our out becomes smaller, but we still have these rights and wrongs and ins and outs deeply embedded in us. That way of seeing the world, that way of doing things. And so generally speaking, as we deconstruct, as we replace certain beliefs, we can fall into the trap of being absolutist, certain, fundamental, even evangelists for our new position, our right position. And I see this more often than not in those that stay within some form of Christianity. Christianity does tend, on some level, to be very in and out, which is in and of itself an interesting concept that we could talk about for a long time. Was that something Jesus intended? Was that something the apostles intended? Is that something that Christianity inherently is or not? Can there be Christian models without ins and outs? All those things are fascinating concepts and questions, but we're not going to talk about spirituality, the theological implications of that right now. We're just looking at the fact that many people that stay in Christianity still have those ins and outs, those rights and wrongs, and they still want people to believe what's right. They still have a deeply ingrained belief that if you just believe what's right, you'll be fine. And so they may have changed their position on hell. Maybe they believe in a universalistic model and ultimate reconciliation of all rather than eternal conscious torment, but they've become the new evangelist for it, right? So they are out there and they are preaching every day. They're going, you guys are wrong. You're not going to go to hell. Everyone's loved. God loves everyone. He'll save everyone. Don't worry about it. Stop preaching doom and gloom and putting this kind of religious toxic shame and abuse on people. You need to stop that. They become the new evangelists for their own model. And so that type of person often becomes the voice of something like Reconstruction. generally speaking, people that are saying Reconstruction are going to have a more certain position on their own spirituality. People that have a more open position on their spirituality aren't going to be so loud about, well, you need to reconstruct, because they understand, well, actually, we're all on a journey and we all believe something. We are constructing something as we go. We are building and developing our beliefs as we go. They just might be different than mine, and that's okay. When you hold things a bit looser, you're a bit more open to people believing differently. If you become fundamental, and this isn't to pick on Christians, you can do this as you can be a fundamental agnostic, right? So you can go, well, I'm not sure and no one can be sure. So then you become fundamental about it and you start going, well, you can't be sure of that. You have to understand that you don't really know. It's all subjective, we can never really know. And so you can become fundamental about that. Or maybe you're atheist and you become fundamental about that, right? And so you become the next Richard Dawkins. I love Richard Dawkins, not saying anything against him, but he's fundamental about it, right? So he's trying to convince Christians and convince others that Christianity is flawed, that it's problematic, and other religions based on kind of a theistic kind of model. He's saying, look, that's not right. It's not correct. Atheism is the only kind of one that really makes much sense. And so people need to become atheists to become happy and healthy. And look at all this data. People that are atheists are actually more moral. They're more healthy. They're whatever. And so he's become a new evangelist for his certainty. And so maybe he might say, yeah, deconstructing Christian is good, but don't go back into Christianity. You need to go all the way to atheism. I don't know what Richard Dawkins would say to deconstructing Christian. So I'm using him as a very obvious example of a more militant atheist. And I use that in the most loving way because I think he's a great guy and a fascinating person. My point being, it's very easy for people with certain positions to want people to reconstruct, i.e. to construct what they have, to agree with where they're at, to come to the same place that they have. I think this is part of our ego. We want to be validated. We want to know that what we believe is right. And the more people that agree with us, the safer we feel that we believe something that's correct, right? It's that we all like people that agree with us. When people agree with us, we just go, oh yeah, I'm right. I feel good. I feel a bit of a buzz. That's natural. That's and how much more natural is that when we are thinking about something that's got eternal consequences or something, right? If I stop believing in hell, I want some people to agree with me. If every person I know goes, no, you're wrong and you're going to go to hell, that's a scary place to be in. Even if I don't believe in hell now, I'm a little anxious about it, right? And so many of you, I'm sure, can empathize with that as you deconstruct. You're going through this very lonely process. And so, yeah, I think it's perfectly natural for us to want people to agree with us, to have people that see our view and go, that's a great view, I agree with it, I want to follow that. But it's really dangerous to force this on people, to try and steer people into believing what we believe. Largely because as people deconstruct, they're going from a position where they have come out of conventional Christianity. At conventional Christianity, most people have a psychological makeup, and we'll talk about this in a future video where we talk about stages of consciousness and developmental models and things like that. But as people develop, they go through stages of how they view the world, how they view themselves, how they view others, what their needs are, how their ego develops, what their morality is, and how that develops. All these things go through stages of development. And one of the stages of development is very conventional, and it needs safety and certainty and security, and it looks to authority to give it to that. And that stage is generally what you'll find people within conventional Christianity at. They are looking for safety, certainty, and security. They're looking to authority figures, whether it's a god, a pastor, a pope, a Bible, some authority that just tells them this is the way it is, and you can feel safe that you know what's right if you just listen to it and follow it. Of course, there's all kinds of fallacies with that, right? Every other person that reads the Bible reads it differently, right? Every person that listens to God will tell you that he said something slightly different, right? So of course, that's problematic, but many people don't see it at this level. And the next stage as we grow out of that, that's generally the process of deconstruction. As you go out of that process, you start to find a bit more autonomy. You start to find a bit more individualism. And you go, gosh, I can question some of these things. And actually, these people I look at as authorities aren't maybe authorities. Maybe that pastor doesn't know as much as I thought he did. And I Google quickly and I go, gosh, there's other options. He didn't even bring those up. I don't even think he knows about those options within Christianity. And so you start questioning and doubting and looking in other ways. And what's going to happen is you are now finding a bit more freedom, a bit more room to grow But you still have, people don't go from one stage to another. We kind of slowly transition from stage to stage. So we often find ourselves in a few different stages, spread across a few different ways of thinking, a few different like kind of psychological models. And so what happens is, as we grow in our autonomy and our individualism, early on, we still are looking for certainty, safety, and security. And we often are looking for an authority figure. What changes is we just think, well, maybe I'll find the right authority figure. Maybe I can find someone that really knows what's good. And that's a good thing. That's a good change, right? It's a really helpful thing. It's a really helpful thing if you're in a church and the pastor is saying, hey, don't take your meds because you're depressed. That's not what God wants, right? And you suddenly move out of that and you start to go, well, maybe my pastor doesn't know what's best for me as far as mental health goes. Maybe his training isn't in that. And you go and speak to a mental health practitioner and say, what should I do? And you look at their credentials and they've got good qualifications within mental health. They've got many years of experience. And you think, I'm going to listen to this one. That's a good change, right? To start to look for authority that has more grounding. But what can be dangerous is, as we start to deconstruct and we start to look for new authorities to give us theological grounding or spiritual grounding, is often people will give us that certainty when really what we're needing right now is to fully explore what's going on. We need to be embracing a bit more uncertainty. That's kind of what the most helpful and healthy kind of process is for most people. It might be that what you need really right now is just to find a new sense of security, a new sense of certainty, and to hunker down for a bit longer before you continue growing, maybe a decade later, maybe a few years later. But for most people, what they need is room to breathe, room to explore, room to try and find something new. This is why people get really frustrated when they message me. My messages are always open to people. I love talking to people and helping them on their journey. But they'll ask me, what does the Bible say about this? What do you think about God? What do you think the answer is here? And I frustrate them so much because I don't give them black and white answers. I won't tell them what I think, and I won't tell them what to think, or even necessarily what one book they should research or read or anything like that. I try and give them a broad overview, and I try and go, hey, well, this is a really complex thing, and a lot of people arrive in different places, but it's interesting you're asking this question. Here's a whole host of different things you can read to study that, or here's a book that looks at like multiple different angles, or have you thought about this question, and cause them to just step a bit more into that questioning. Because I think, generally speaking, what we need is not a reconstruction into a new certainty. What we need is a freedom to move into more exploration, more adventuring, more questioning and following our curiosity. And so my point of making this video is to warn you that many people out there are going to talk about reconstruction. Most of them are going to be conventional Christians, right? Most of them are going to be the pastor that you just left, and he's going to go, well, yeah, it's good to doubt, it's good to question these things, but as long as you come back to Jesus, or as long as you do so according to the Bible. These are the kind of things you're going to hear regularly from people like conventional Christians. But you might also find people in progressive Christian models going, well, yeah, it's good to question, but like, you can question within this framework of Christianity. You don't need to question outside of it. Don't explore too far. You want to keep following Jesus. Jesus is the way, like he really is. And so they're going to try and bring you to a place where you arrive where they have arrived. And I think that can be great. I think it's no surprise that we all arrive in similar places at times. I think there's obviously a lot of truth to a lot of these positions. Otherwise, millions of people wouldn't arrive at these different positions. The point is, though, millions of people arrive at different positions from each other. And so we need the freedom to explore that. So be wary of that. Be wary of it from people outside of Christianity as well. You will find this in place there as well. People will say, oh, of course you're deconstructing Christianity. It's because Hinduism is right, or Buddhism is right, or Christianity is right. Christianity is the wrong one, but like whatever it might be, Judaism, Islam, atheism, whatever it is, be very wary of people that are black and white about what you have to believe. It's not necessarily the most helpful thing for you. What's going to be helpful for you is to explore and to play. And so enjoy that process, enjoy questioning. You're naturally reconstructing something. You are constructing something new. That's what's happening as you deconstruct. You are now believing a set of beliefs that you have never believed before. In fact, you're probably so unique that no one in this universe has believed the exact set of billions of beliefs that you believe, right? And so you're constantly in this process of taking away some beliefs and bringing in some other beliefs. And so try not to get too in your heads. Try not to let other people manipulate you, make you feel guilt or shame or anything about not believing the right thing or deconstructing the wrong way or not reconstructing. All that stuff, generally speaking, is much more manipulative than helpful. Now, I will say it's not intentionally manipulative. It's not intentionally trying to deceive you or harm you or cause your growth to be stunted. These people genuinely believe they found the right answer. Just like you had at conventional Christian stages, right? You genuinely believe, I'm right. I know the right way. I know that this is going to take me to heaven and everyone else is going to hell. I need to go save people. Like, that mentality is still there. So even if you are in that new position, it's not that you're manipulating someone when you give them certainty. It's just that's where you're at. You certainly believe you are true and you certainly believe other people are wrong. So you want them to be right. You want them to have the right beliefs. It will affect their lives in a positive way if they believe the right thing. So it's not to shame anyone that's in that position. I don't think we need to go on a crusade attacking people that are in that place. I just think we need to be wary of it and be aware that that might not be the most helpful thing for us to try and reconstruct the same way that someone else tells us to, or the same way that was helpful for them might not be helpful for you. All right, that's enough about reconstruction, but I hope it's given you a bit of an overview of what's going on when people talk about reconstruction and why we need to be a little wary of that. I love y'all. Catch you later. If you are deconstructing, there is no reason to do this alone. It can be an incredibly lonely process, but the deconstructionnetwork.com is a free resource to help you find others deconstructing in your local area. If you would like to support what I do, everything I do is for free, from talking to people for hours on end to producing resources and podcasts. It is only possible because people give generously. There's never any need to give. It will always be free, everything I do. But if you do, we do have an amazing private community group that we talk on over on Discord that you would gain access to. And we do regular audio and video chats on there as well. So it'd be great to see you in there. But of course, never any requirement. And of course, please, please, please come and talk to me on Instagram. I love connecting with people. I love helping people on their journey. If you need a safe space to process your deconstruction, I would love to connect. It's just at Phil Drysdale. Love every one of you. Peace.